All right, here we go. This is it. Episode 53 of BetParks Presents Stick to Hockey Live. Jason Bertidis, Anthony DeMarco from thefourthperiod.com. Going to join us in just a moment. Let me tell you about BetParks. We're getting down to the nitty gritty here. There could be just one NHL Stanley Cup playoff game left. That's it. They're on the brink. The Tampa Bay Lightning are on the brink. I didn't think it would happen in 5. I thought 7, but we'll see what happens. Tampa Bay is going to have something to say, but maybe just one NHL game left. And then you still have baseball, you still have tennis, you still have golf, you still have Formula One, plenty to gamble on. You can still look at the futures in the football and NFL and college football market. All there for you on the all-new BetParks Casino and Sportsbook app. It is now live. Take it from me. It's very easy to use. And for all sports, it's right in your pocket, simple to navigate, simple to get same-game parlays, player performances, points, runs, pitches, no matter what it is, what sport, it's all there for you. Easy, simple to use, and easy to sign up and faster to win than ever before. And here's a great deal. Whether you're signed up already or you're thinking about signing up, right now, all BetParks users, again, I use the word all, new and existing, can use the promo code JASON750, JASON750, and that will get you a risk-free bet up to $750. Some of the other sites, they go like $100, $50, maybe even $500. Nobody goes to $750. BetParks goes to $750. So again, new and existing users, use that promo code JASON750 and get that risk-free bet up to $750. Terms and conditions do apply. So do yourself a favor. Download the BetParks app today. Check it out, and you will see great info there. You do need to be over 21 and present in Pennsylvania or New Jersey. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. Let's get to our guest right now from thefourthperiod.com. We talk to him every Thursday, and he joins us on BetParks Presents Stick to Hockey Live. It is once again Anthony DeMarco. What's going on, Ant?
Not much, buddy. In my new setup for the next couple months, the joy of moving. So more of a retro feel down here. I don't know if you guys can see it, but way more of a retro vibe where in my new setup, that's for sure.
It looks like an episode of That 70s Show.
That's it. We're just missing the circle.
Yeah, you got the bong circle.
Yeah, the bong circle. Hey, it's a PG show. No, it's not. Who am I kidding? Yeah.
See, a lot of people saw that circle and like, what are they doing? Why are they always sitting in a circle? They didn't realize that they were getting ripped.
Yeah, I remember once I was watching it with my stepbrother, who was about 3 years younger than me, which isn't that much. And he was just like, oh my God, I find it so funny how they just sit in that circle and get drunk. I was just like, yeah, it's hilarious.
You don't want to break it though.
Yeah, exactly.
They're burning. I feel like it's been like the past week. Like for so many weeks, we've been coming on and going, okay, what's going to happen? What could happen? Barry Trotz, Bruce Cassidy, Pete DeBoer, all these different names, Mike Vellucci.
Montgomery.
And then all of a sudden, Torts is hired and you get this whirlwind of a week. It feels like 1,000 things happened in the past week where nothing happened prior to that for about 2 months.
Yeah, look, we kind of knew that it was fast tracking in this direction for a bit. And, the last time we spoke, they hadn't officially announced it yet. I believe it was just it was kind of like official, but not official. And then we have Torts speak over the weekend. Obviously, he has the media availability on Friday. Then he has his private availability at Voorhees on Tuesday, I believe. And it's kind of just been the Torch show. And, like him or hate him or like the hire or don't like the hire, you can objectively say that his initial introduction to Philadelphia and the Philadelphia Flyers has been anything but spectacular. And, I know you got to sit down with him one-on-one yesterday or the day before. And tell me about it. Just how infectious is this guy's passion?
Yeah, look, I'll be fully transparent here. He's a guy that I obviously beat the drum for a long time, even going back before they hired AV. He was a guy that I was always like, I just always felt he would fit here in this city. And, all of the theatrics and histrionics and all that shit never bothered me. I always found him entertaining with the way he dealt with the media, which is weird because I was actually a media member for many years. But I just always thought it was a good fit here. And obviously, when AV got fired, I mean, the day after AV got fired, the Flyers played the Colorado Avalanche at Wells Fargo that night. AV gets let go in the morning, or it's announced in the morning. Mike Yost, the interim, they were on back-to-backs with Tampa and Colorado. And Colorado came in and hung a touchdown on him, kicked the shit out of him. And I remember in that post-game show that night on the Flyers radio network, I said that they need to look at John Tortorella. So I've sanctioned for this guy. I've beat the drum for him. I was obviously for him. So consider that with what I'm about to say. I mean, he hit a grand slam this week. I thought he just touched on everything he needed to touch on. I think that he's attacked some of the narratives about him as a coach and, the dinosaur mentality, or players hate playing for him, or developing young players, whatever it might be, tenure. I think he's attacked it all head on. And I think, look, when I asked him about it, he said, look, I've made my own bed in a lot of situations. I've made mistakes. I own them. But, it's interesting, Ant, because a lot of people look at him as a dinosaur and they call him a dinosaur. And then Paul Maurice gets hired and they go, oh, good hiring by Florida.
Yeah,
He's not a
exactly.
dinosaur, but Torts is. And he is the oldest coach the Flyers have ever hired at 64 tomorrow. But, I mean, to me, in talking with him both in my one-on-one conversation, which everybody can see in the interview I did with him, or just talking to him off the record, I spent a good amount of time with him on Tuesday. Very progressive hockey thinker. There's no dinosaur thing going on here. He has constantly been evolving and changing. And I thought, we talked about a lot of different things philosophically about the game. And I found a guy that's very progressive in his way of thinking about the games, not in a dinosaur approach at all. So I thought that was really refreshing.
I think his candor and his honesty is something that this team and this organization really needs. And the fact that he was able to say in his first media availability that he would like help to aid on the offensive side of the puck and on the power play, and really want to get an assistant coach to delegate all of that to, even like by the sounds of it, more of like an associate coach as opposed to an assistant coach. I mean, for a coach to say that and basically say, like, yeah, this is not my cup of tea. I want someone there to help me. And especially a coach that is kind of locked at the hip with this narrative that he's old school and players hate him and he burns out fast.
Controls everything.
Yeah, control freak. I think he squashed a lot of those thoughts. And look, I mean, I'm not going to lie. I'm not as, let's say, balls deep in this hire as, let's say, you are. I was more on the neutral side. I was just like, okay, we'll see how it goes. But I got to say, he swung me way more in the positive direction because of it. Yeah. And then, when I talk to people with the Flyers and they say, like, wait till you see his passion. And then I see his media availability the day after he was hired, or the same day. I forget how it eventually fell on the official side of things. I said, yeah, I could see why this guy was the one that really jumped off the page. And like, look, we know that they really wanted Barry Trotz, but like I said last week, I kind of spoke about it on my podcast yesterday, is like, do you want a Barry Trotz who had one foot out the door? Do you want a Barry Trotz whose mind was eventually getting into management? Do you want a Barry Trotz who only took this job because he became the richest coach in NHL history?
Yeah.
And I think these are things that really maybe started to swing the ball in Tortorella's court. And look, that's not to say it was between Torts and Trotz, DeBoer, Montgomery, all Vellucci, all these guys that you rattled off, but it sure as hell felt that for the last month or so, it was kind of a 2-horse race between these two.
Yeah, it seemed like a fait accompli. It was either one or the other, or maybe it was Trotz and then it was definitely Torts. But you can see, though, like you saw it too, like since he's been introduced, you can see how how Torts can win a guy over in
Big
the way
time.
he presents himself. You know what I mean? Like you could just I thought it was really interesting because I asked him too about how he's evolved as a coach. And he said that, earlier in his career, he goes, I think we overcoach because we want to control everything. And he's right. Like when the 3-on-3 came in, the spirit of the 3-on-3 was there. And then the coaches got their hands on it and ruined the 3-on-3 overtime. right? By controlling it and pulling the puck out and all that bullshit. It wasn't just up and down frenetic hockey of creativity and high flying skill. But he said that I used to try and control everything, and I've had to let go of trying to control every element of, hey, you didn't do this perfect. You didn't forecheck the right way. You didn't defend the right way. You were slightly offline, being on the right side of the puck, all of those things. He goes, because I got to realize, like, yeah, I played the game and I played the game at a substandard level, never made it to the pros. Like, this is Tortorella talking. How am I supposed to tell guys in that position that have all this skill in the world how they should react on the ice in a fluid game when they have all that skill? Like, he's like, I've never had that skill. How can I, almost tie their hands? So he said, I letting go and just building up the character and building up, what you need to do. And there's going to be mistakes, and accepting that, and also accepting the consequences of mistakes. But he goes, I had to relinquish control, stop trying to control everything, which is why he said, he'd have super long practices before because he wanted to control everything through repetition. Now he's like, I got to get the same amount of work done. I just got to do it in 45 minutes. By being prepared and those things.
Kind of like a law of diminishing returns, right? Eventually, and the less is more approach. And I love that part of Tortorella, that he's been able to pinpoint where he's messed up in the past. And I believe he also mentioned in his media availability that he mentioned a give and take, that he'll let you be the creative with the puck, but when you don't have the puck, you have to play the right way.
Yeah.
And I think that's a really cool way and a cool standard to set with your players, that, like, look, you could do whatever you want with the puck if you're Mr. Creativity. Luckily or unluckily for the Flyers, they don't have a lot of guys who are overly creative with the puck.
Yeah.
But let's say you do, and let's say Konechny takes that next step, or Farabee or Frost, for those guys. Yeah. Frost is like the big one for me that I'm really curious to see how it goes, because it felt like Mike Yeo was working directly with Frost for like almost the entirety of his tenure as interim coach.
And so much was about play away from the puck.
Exactly. And, I stand by, like, as we take a quick sidetrack on Frost, like, I stand by that, like, he only has a fit on this team if he's playing center. For me, I don't think there's another need for another middle of the road winger. He needs to be a centerman.
Yeah.
So it's really going to be interesting how he plays away from the puck with John Tortorella. But if John Tortorella says, hey, you do whatever you want with the puck, you create offensive opportunities down low, you'll get your time on the power play, but when you don't have the puck, you better be back checking, better be in the right position. I'm curious to see how it's going to go. And maybe a coach that's just so transparent and is so honest will fit that way better than, let's say, a guy like AV, who probably wasn't the best communicator in the world, or a guy like, let's say, Mike Yeo, who really wanted to correct how this team played systematic wise and maybe did it in an overcorrection. Yeah. So maybe you get a guy like John Tortorella who comes in and is kind of like the best of both worlds.
Yeah. And like, to go to your point before too, mentioning you got to find the right power play guy. Like, they're keeping Kim Dillabaugh here, the Flyers goaltending coach. He's good relationship with Hart. And Tort said the other day down in the locker room on Tuesday, said, I don't know shit about goaltending. They got a guy here that does. And the relationship's good. And so much of the goaltender dynamic is that relationship and trust. So he's going to be staying. You and I were texting last night. I was talking to Bill Meltzer about it as well, about Andrew Brunette. Chuck hired him in Minnesota as his first assistant coach gig. Is he going to be leaving Florida? I would imagine he leaves Florida.
It's a weird dynamic.
That situation was weird. That situation was handled weird. He's going to look for another head coaching job, I'm sure. But if there's not one there available to him, this won't be one that makes sense. I mean, just if you're trying to woo him, just have Mike Sullivan call him. Because Mike Sullivan worked under Torts for 7 years, and you can see the elements in Mike Sullivan, the way he coaches, of the influence of John Tortorella.
Yeah, and like you said, it's not hard dots to connect, right? That he was, a long-time Minnesota Wild player. I believe he actually finished with the Blackhawks, if I'm not mistaken.
Mm-hmm.
And he's still a young guy, but probably not quite ready to be an assistant coach, or a head coach, rather. Kind of took over in a very tumultuous situation, what went down with Q and all that. And maybe he just took over a train that was on a steamroll ahead. But when you got to the playoffs and you start coaching against veterans like Laviolette and John Cooper, he got exposed.
Yeah.
And look, even against the Capitals, like I think if you put any half decent goalie in the net for the Caps, the Capitals probably win that series.
I agree.
And you know, Brunette, I think he still is a young guy. He's what, early 40s, mid 40s.
Yeah.
It felt like he was playing not too long ago here, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So maybe he comes in for like beside Tortorella, and that would work a lot. And kind of, you know, when we were texting, you had mentioned kind of like he would kind of be like an in-house replacement in the long term. You know, Tortorella isn't a spare chicken. Like even if he finishes out the term on his contract, like what he wants
68.
Exactly. Like you can't imagine that he would go beyond that. I mean, I guess it's possible. I think Rick
He
Bowen
said this is his last job.
Yeah, so there you go. It's not so, and I think it would be kind of cool for the Flyers to have an in-house replacement already at the ready, because the last time they did that was Berube, and he lasted less than 2 full seasons.
Yeah.
So, and beyond him, you have to really go back to John Stevens, who really got a long tenure as an in-house replacement. And I do think
he came
that
along with Hitch, right?
Yeah, he was the coach of the. Yeah, he was the coach of the Phantoms, and then he came up with Hitch, and then he eventually became the head coach in 2006, 2007. And look, I'm not opposed to like outside hires, but you also have to look at some examples recently of Berube winning a cup, Cooper winning a cup, Cassidy. Well, no, he just got them to the cup final, but Mike Sullivan. You know, a lot of these last coaches came from within their respective organizations. I think the last outside hire to actually win a Stanley Cup was Barry Trotz with the Caps in 2018.
Yeah.
Now, look, it's not a one-size-fits-all system. It really depends.
Even Chief in St. Louis came from the AHL affiliate.
Exactly. So, you know, like you do have to kind of account for that, and you can't always go with outside hires. And, you know, even a guy like Hackstall was an outside hire. He jumped straight from the NCAA. So I would be very on board with Andrew Brunette. But like you mentioned, I guess that would be him exhausting all head coaching opportunities first.
Yeah. Well, look, there's not a lot of chairs left, Ant. There's not. I mean, Vegas filled, Dallas filled, Florida now filled with Paul Maurice. I mean, Winnipeg's still out there, but Barry Trotz is still out there. I just have this gut feeling he's not going to coach next year.
Wouldn't be surprised.
I have no info, but why is he not decided yet? I mean, it's like with all these other chairs kind of being filled, and for him not to make a decision yet, to me, there's massive indecision there at that point. Either commit shit or get off the pot here. Let's go.
I have a little bit of speculation, and look, this is like I would say 95% speculation, but have you looked at how old David Poile is? That guy, I think he's approaching 80 now.
Is he really?
I think David Poile is like in Lou Lamoriello territory as far as age concerns, as far as age goes, rather. And like, I'm thinking like, is he maybe not waiting to just get a GM spot with the Nashville Predators? That's kind of like where my head is at. We know he bought a house. 72. So not quite like Lamoriello, but Poile, I believe, is the only GM the Predators have ever had.
Yeah. And the winningest GM in NHL history. Yeah,
just based on longevity. And look, I think that is a big possibility that you may see Barry Trotz become maybe not the next general manager of the Nashville Predators, but maybe an assistant GM or something like that.
Yeah, it's almost like an apprenticeship because Poile's going to retire, but there's a transitional period of a year or two where he works alongside David Poile.
Yeah.
As like almost a co-GM, if you will.
That's where my head is kind of at.
Yeah, I don't think that you're very far off on that. That's kind of what I feel as well. Bought that house in Nashville.
Exactly. He spent how many years? 15 plus with the Nashville Predators, the first coach they knew. And for me, it just felt like from an on-ice team perspective, Winnipeg made a ton of sense. I know that Darren Dreger had reported that he has an elderly father who still lives in Manitoba. So, I mean, I thought that would be a good fit, even from a personal perspective. Obviously, Cheveldayoff is another guy who you would assume that maybe sooner rather than later is no longer the GM with the Jets. He's been there since the organization moved back to Winnipeg. Mm-hmm. So I thought that But like you said, it just feels like this guy's in no hurry to get back behind a bench. And then that's why I kind of started thinking after the first 3-4 weeks of him being available, like, is this really the guy you want to come in if he clearly is in no hurry to start coaching again? And I kind of was thinking, like, if he ends up in Philadelphia, it's only because the offer was just so lucrative that he could not deny it.
Yeah. And sometimes, like, hey, that's great. You can, your organization of means, you can do that. But is that the right fit? Because is the guy committed from, every fiber of his being, or is it a financial decision? And look, finances come into it, but John Tortorella is going to make good money. I mean, Torts, like I asked him in my one-on-one with him towards the end of it, I said, how on God's green earth are you going to calm down and kind of let your summer take place so you can go in fresh? You know what I mean? Like, he's got his whole training camp done. Every practice is planned already. He mentioned that the other day. He's like, I got training camp done. Like, that thing is all laid out, ready to go. When we're doing this, now he's working on travel. This is another thing that he mentioned, like, as he's kind of gotten older and gone through it, he wants the guys, like, on the road. If you play, say, in Minnesota on a Tuesday, and then you're going to Colorado after that to play on Thursday, he goes, I want to stay over in Minnesota on that game night. I don't want to travel from Minnesota to Colorado that night, get into Colorado at 3 a.m., have a skate the next day, and then maybe Colorado's a bad example because you want to get there early because of the altitude, but whatever.
I get what you mean.
Yeah, but he's like, I want the guys, like, after a game to be able to go have a meal, have a beer together, those kind of things. That's more important than to us jumping on a plane right away and getting to the next destination just to be there. He goes, so I think their travel is going to be a lot different this year, where, look, their travel is not difficult because of where we're located here. All the train rides and bus rides because of New York, New Jersey, and DC. It's a lot easier. And Torch is used to that because he coached in New York. So he knows that element of it. But when you have some of those road trips and you have an opportunity to stay overnight in Minnesota or stay overnight in Chicago, as opposed to just going from Chicago to Detroit, stay. Let the boys go out and have a beer, have a couple, have a nice steak dinner after the game and have a couple drinks. That brings the group together. I think that's important. And I think that's the evolution of going, how do I get these guys together completely on and off the ice? And that's part of it, I think.
And look, I think his number one job, aside from X's and O's and aside from developing players, I think his number one job here is changing the culture in that room.
Standard, right?
And getting everyone on the same page. And look, we've heard rumblings for over a year now that locker room was fractured. And the other part
of that word, fractured and splintered, to use both those words a couple times this week about the locker room.
And if he knows that, that means the front office knows that. And I think he, from that perspective, is the best guy for the job. And I think it's a big plus that he's coming in and one of the guys who, maybe not a favorite for the captain, but certainly one of the new leaders of this team, Cam Atkinson, is a massive fan of Torts. And I think that he's going to have a really, not a big task, but more of a significant task because of how important it's going to be to get these guys on the same page. And I think, and again, like, this is not to kick rocks at G or Jake Voracek or Shane Gostisbehere, but I think it is so important in a good way that those guys are gone, that he's going to be able, like, and again, this is not me kicking rocks at G. Like, I have nothing bad to say about the guy, but I think the fact that you're coming in, there's no captain as of yet. I'm of the belief there shouldn't be a captain this year, but I know there probably will be. But I think that you still have some leftover from the last era in Couturier and Scott Laughton, Provorov, Sanheim, Konecny. They kind of went through that. Then the newer types of leaders in Hayes and Cam Atkinson. And I think the fact that it is kind of like a brand new leadership group here, I think that Tortorella is going to have an easier time because of it.
And I think totally agree. Totally agree.
You think so?
I think you're dead on. And here's why. Because I think that when you have a captain that was here as long as G, and again, this is nothing against Drew. Everybody knows how I feel about him, both from a hockey perspective on and off the ice. Obviously, I've gotten to know him pretty well. But when there's that void there now, and there's not that guy just sitting there that's going to automatically take it, it puts everybody in a position to go, okay, I got to step up. I want a part of this leadership. I want ownership. And I think when you have ownership in sports, that's a huge thing. Look at year one of Kevin Hayes with AV. He was the Cam Atkinson. He played for AV before. He was the translator, if you will, for everybody. Is this AV just being a pain in the ass? Is this legit? All of those things. Atkinson's going to get those questions like, Cam, is this just bullshit or is this legit when he's pissed off about? Is he just trying to make it? There's going to be those things, and Cam can go, what? Look, this is really important to Torts, or
to be the conduit.
Yeah, exactly. And I think it's really good to have that void in leadership that needs to be filled for some guys at really important times in their career. And you mentioned Konechny and you mentioned Provorov. Like, those guys should be jumping at that. Konechny's been a captain every level he's been at except the NHL. I'm not suggesting he should be the captain here, but I'm saying there's an opportunity for him to jump into that. And if he can jump into some leadership, then I think that helps him, in his stead with the organization and his stead with the team. And because I think when you're a leader, you hold yourself to a different level of standard in the way you come to the rink every day.
And look, like, Konechny's a guy that I think is polarizing in a lot of ways on this team. Provorov as well,
right?
Yeah, Provorov and Konechny are two guys who were kind of like staple draft picks from the Ron Hextall era. Yeah. That it's like there's the battle lines are drawn. You either hate him or you love him. And like, look, from an objective standpoint, I felt like Konechny's expendable because of how deep they are on the right wing. But I also know that there's many in the Flyers organization that really like the player and feel like there's still a lot for him to give. And look, even as of today, you can bank on him scoring 50 to 55 points.
Yep.
But I think what they're hoping is that you can get that to that point production we saw in 1920. And I think that him, much like Provorov, would be best served to stay here another year. And then if you want to trade him, the value is that much more. Now, look, I'm not going to sit here and say I think Travis Konechny is a top-line winger or standalone top-line winger, but I still think that he's maybe like that fringe between the second and first line.
Yeah.
And I would love to see what a guy like Tortorella would be able to do for Travis Konechny. And I was told earlier this week from someone within the Flyers that, there's no truth to the Konechny rumors. Now, do I believe that no team has ever kicked tires on his availability or what the Flyers would want from him? Of course not. But I don't think the Flyers are actively looking to shop him. I don't think they're actively.
He falls into that category of, hey, nobody's untouchable, but I'm not proactively shopping him.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And I would even argue that I would advocate for him to be more available, but I also understand why the Flyers don't want to make him that available.
Yeah.
And also a guy is Ivan Provorov. I am so curious to see what John Tortorella could do for him, because you saw what he did with the likes of Zach Werenski and Seth Jones down in Columbus. And obviously it goes far beyond the coaching. The Flyers have to find a solution to the right side of that top pair, whether it's Ryan Ellis getting healthy, which, I mean, I'm not banking on, or bringing in a reasonable facsimile like Matthew Dumba or Ethan Bear, something along those lines. But I mean, all I'm going to say is that these are two players that obviously have become very polarizing, have struggled respectively at times over the last year and a half, that I think are going to be big benefactors of John Tortorella.
Yeah, and that's the thing about Torts too. He's been a guy that's always developed talent, and in this situation, he'd be developing some young talent, whether that's Noah Cates, who I think he'll like a lot, and Joel Farabee, taking him to another level, which I think I would really like Farabee a lot. But to me, it's also about looking at those players like Provorov, like Konechny, and getting the arc of their NHL development pointed in the right direction again, as opposed to plateauing or regressing, over the past couple of years. And whether some of that's pandemic related, I don't know. I don't care why it hasn't happened. It's for some players in the league it has, and some it hasn't. And that's been going on around the league forever, that players hit a certain level, then they either regress or they plateau, and you think they have more to give. Well, Tortorella is going to find out if they got more to give. And if they don't, then, and if it's because of commitment or any of those things, then they won't be here. But he's going to get a chance to find that out himself before. This notion that what's Konechny done in this lately? 3 straight 24-goal seasons. And in the last one that he had, the 24, he did it in 69 games. So it was a 30-goal pace. Like you said, he's not a standalone top-line winger. Let's not act like the guy's Alpo, that he's dog shit. Again, I think it's just this. It's our society today. Like, we say things with such extreme. It's either he's great or he's dog shit. The middle ground. It's like politics in the U.S.
Yeah.
It's either you're all the way over here, you're all the way over here. There's very little. Actually, there's a lot of people that live in the middle ground. They just don't say anything. So the things that get said are the extremes. Flyers have no talent. Well, Sean Couturier won a Selke 2 years ago. You know what I mean? There is some talent here. Do they need more? Fuck yeah, they need more.
they need high-end talent. Exactly.
Yeah. Which brings me to DeBrincat, because I see the guy, I think Dan, who you do Butterly Pod with, be like, if you don't want DeBrincat, then you're not a Flyer fan. But what Dan's got to realize, I want DeBrincat. I want a 40-goal scorer. Of course, he's 24 years old. But after this year, his qualifying offer is going to be $9 million. And then if I want to extend him when he gets the UFA status, that's starting with a 10 if he keeps doing what he's doing. He's a winger. I have to consider all these different elements too, that, hey, I got some aging centers on this roster. I don't have great organizational depth when it comes to the center position. He's a winger, an undersized winger. Yeah, he does something that I need, which is score. But it's not just this slam dunk. I got to figure out all the salary cap ramifications of this. I got Sanheim coming up on UFA status. I got to figure out what I'm doing there. I got Carter Hart that's going to be coming up on UFA status. I got to figure out what I'm going to do there. Farabee, all these pieces. There's way more to just going, hey, if you don't want this guy, then you're not a true fan.
Well, look, I would be all in for DeBrincat. He is that high-end talent. He's a young player, but
with that money to attach to.
Look, I mean, because you have to ask yourself, Jay, is just like, who else on this team is going to be a $9 to $10 million player within the organization too? Like, even if let's say
I have a problem just kind of going $9 to $10 million on a winger.
That's a good point, and that's why.
Issue.
And that's why
He's a center. Fuck, I'm in.
Well, that's it, because you have to say how many $9 million wingers are there in the NHL. You have Kucherov, you have Marner, you have Ovechkin, Panarin.
You're going to have Gaudreau,
and he's another guy. He kind of falls into under the same umbrellas. It's like, do you want to pay a winger $10 million and an undersized winger at that?
Yeah.
And in the case of Gaudreau, you're not going to be giving up assets to bring him in.
Yeah.
But, you're going to be backing up the Brinks truck for a guy who's going to be 30 years old in a year from now.
Yeah.
So, I mean, in the case of DeBrincat, like, I want Alex DeBrincat for sure. But, I asked one of my sources yesterday, and they said, we don't have the assets to trade for him. And
I disagree with that.
Yeah. Because I didn't take it as we don't have the assets in the way of, like, if we couldn't put together a package. I took it as we know what other teams are putting together and we're not willing to go there.
So teams are going too far. I think we kicked the tires with Chicago on him, but you're going to have to give up a lot. And the thing is like we're seeing now with Pierre-Luc Dubois, which I think Freege reported last night. He wants to get to free agency. It's not till 2024. But still, like, if I give up this huge package and he just decides he wants to get to UFA status, there's nothing I can do. And I get 2 years of the player and I'm kind of left in the lurch. And I don't have any of the assets that I gave up, whether it's the 5th pick and Farabee and something else. I don't know. But
yeah. And I think that's what he, like, my source meant was that, by we don't have the assets, I think they meant, like, we know what teams are going to put together for him. We know that they've kicked tires. TFP reported that.
Yeah.
But I think it's that they don't think they have the assets in a realistic world in terms of, like,
the appetite is too great for what they're willing to give up.
Yeah, and I believe that based on conversation I've had with people that fifth overall pick is in play, that they're going to use it to see what they could do with it. But I mean, are you going to trade, like you said, the fifth overall Joel Farabee and Cam York to bring in Alex DeBrincat?
Yeah. And then not have the guarantee that he doesn't want to get the unrestricted free agency.
Yeah, and that's why, and we discussed it on our podcast yesterday with Anthony Sanfilippo, and I said, like, based on all these, this entire situation between what you would have to trade for DeBrincat, what's he going to command as an RFA, all that, would you rather do that, or would you rather go after Johnny Gaudreau, who would just cost you in the way of cap space?
Yeah.
So I'll
I
flip that
can't go after
question.
Gaudreau either, though, because I don't have the cap space. Even if I'm able to move JVR, I don't have this dearth of second round picks to move players around right now to sweeten the deal because I traded the second round picks. So that's part of it. And then the other thing is, yeah, they can buy out Lindblom, and I think that there's a real good chance they do buy out Lindblom.
I
I know
agree.
this is like one of those things that people like don't want to talk about because of what Oscar went through. But let's just park what Oscar went through and what we think of him as a person and the courageous battle he had. Let's park that for a second. From a hockey standpoint, it probably makes a lot of sense for the Flyers to buy out Oscar Lindblom.
Big time. Big time. And, we've gone over it that if you check it on Cap Friendly, they would actually save more on the cap than his AAV this year. They
Yeah,
would save
that's
3.33, and then the penalty in the following year would only be $2/3 million,
yeah.
666,000. And look, like you said, if we're parking what he went through and what we all think of him as a person at the door for just a second, he has not been good the
No,
last 18 months.
and not commensurate with that salary
No,
to
not
be
at
a
all.
fourth line player.
And look,
And I
even
think
as
we
a
have to also realize, Ant, like he may never get back to that player that we thought he was going to be or that he was trending to be. His body went through a ton. He may never
yeah,
get back there. That sucks for a young guy to have his career and the potency of his career derailed because of that. But this is a bit like if we're just looking at this from a business standpoint, the pieces got to fit.
and the thing is that I think when Chuck Fletcher gave him that contract, 3 million for 3 years, I think it was kind of out of goodwill. Like, let's be
Mm-hmm.
honest, you only had a 30-game sample size of Oscar Lindblom playing as a top six player.
Yeah,
And I know that we had fond memories of that, but he only had what, like 18 points in 30 games? Like,
yeah.
he
He was leading
wasn't.
the team. That's the thing. But it's like it was 30 games. Would he have been
Yeah.
leading the team at the end of the year? And still wasn't a high number.
So I would say that the Flyers kind of paid him in advance,
Yeah.
kind of like at an investment, and to this point the investment hasn't worked out, which is okay. I if hindsight's 2020 obviously, but I don't blame Chuck Fletcher for giving him that contract. What was it, 2 years ago?
Yeah.
But now when you look at where the player's at, what a guy like Noah Cates has been able to provide for you, how important a guy like Scott Lawton has become, and those are probably his two best comparables on the roster right now as bottom six left wingers. And then you look at what it would give you in terms of benefits on the cap. And
In a
I
flat
just
cap
don't,
world.
in a flat cap world, then like it's not often where you get a buyout that would be this advantageous for you. Like, go check the penalty for buying out JVR. It's
Yeah.
not a good look.
Yeah. There's not much advantage to doing it. There just isn't.
For JVR, no. And like,
Yeah.
look, they want to move him, but I don't think anything's close because they would have to pay to get rid of him. I think
Yeah.
that they will move him eventually, but I think what they're trying to do right now is trying to exhaust all their options on trying to give up the least amount of possible for JVR. So you're probably going to be giving up an asset to get rid of JVR. But in the case of Oscar Lindblom, you have an opportunity that, like, for almost for free, and for this year specifically, you're almost gaining cap space. You
We
can
can
just
gain
get
almost
rid of
$11
them.
million in cap space with the two moves.
100%, almost $11 million. I think it's 10 flat, if I'm not. Oh no,
Is
because with the extra, the bit,
Yeah, the
yeah.
extra, yeah.
And then you have your money to go get some guys. And look, I've even said, like, I put out a poll maybe 2 3
Philip
weeks ago.
Forsberg.
Philip Forsberg or Valeri Nichushkin.
Yeah, he's going to get paid. He might get a little inflated. He's an interesting guy too because like he started his career and there was a lot of disappointment early in his career, late bloomer at the NHL level. But look at him
Yeah.
now. Like, I mean, the guy is a fucking farm animal out there.
Bought out by Dallas.
Yeah,
He was
isn't that
bought
crazy?
out. And I always like the player. I like his size. I like his versatility that
Skate.
he can skate. He can play either wing. Like I threw this out on Twitter a few weeks ago. Like assuming the cap hits are more or less the same, would you rather Johnny Gaudreau or would you rather Nichushkin and Nick Paul?
Yeah, see, it's the 2-for-1 thing again. You know, I solve multiple problems with the two, but neither of Nick Paul or Nichushkin give me the fear of God when he steps on the ice.
Exactly. And
So,
that's what Johnny Gaudreau brings. But then
yeah,
again, you're right. Are you willing to pay $10 million a year for a winger who will be in his 30s for the lion's share of the term?
yeah. See, this is where Philip Forsberg gets really interesting to me. You know,
Yeah.
because like the size, like you know how I love big up the middle. The way you build a team, my philosophy. And Forsberg plays the wing, but I mean he gives you a lot of size up front, and he plays a heavy game. You know, I look at that and I go, that's a team that's a bitch to play against in the playoffs.
Yep.
You know,
No, you need those guys, and like
plays center, we can play the wing, you can transition, do a little bit of everything.
well, this is why, like, back when he was available in January of 2021, I wanted Pierre-Luc Dubois because he's a big guy. He plays down the middle and, you know, was still young at the time, still young now. Obviously, there's a lot has changed that he wants to walk to UFA status, but, like, there's just not a lot of opportunities to add big level centermen in the NHL. And you know, I like Couturier, I like Kevin Hayes. Frost, I'm not sure yet with, but he did show some promise at the end of last season. But this is still a team that is weak down the middle. And, you know, unless Frost takes a massive step next year,
Yeah,
I don't know
consistent.
if pardon me.
And it can be consistent.
That's it. And like, you know, like I think that he showed promise with Owen Tippett, but like we kind of broke down earlier in our show, like how is he going to be able to excel under a guy like John Tortorella?
Yeah. Well, man, so many questions. So many questions. But you know, they're going to be aggressive, I think. That's what I'm hearing. They're going to be aggressive.
No, Darren Dreger said the same thing. I'm just not sure if they're gonna like mortgage the future in any way.
Yeah. I think
Like,
you got to be strategic and you got to be tempered. You can't be desperate.
yeah, like for me, like that's the thing that kind of scares me with DeBrincat, which like I would have to see what the actual package would be. But I think that based on the text I got yesterday is kind of like we know what it's going to cost and we're not willing to go there with our assets. Because I think it's going to be like a Cam York. Do you want to give up a Cam York when there's so much uncertainty surrounding Ryan Ellis? Do you want to give up a Joel Farabee when, you know, he's arguably been your best draft pick as far as first rounders go and as skaters go in the last 5 years? Do you want to start dipping into the prospect pool with a guy like Tyson Forster when he's probably like your own real, like, even though it's a long shot, your only real shot of getting a homegrown high-end talent player?
Yeah. Scorer to boot.
Score to boot. Like there's just a lot of players here. Like, look, like, yeah, if you could get him for something revolving around a Travis Konechny or a Morgan Frost, then yeah, I would go for that 100%. But from a Blackhawk point of view, and I think we all know that other teams are going to back up the Brinks trucks for Alex DeBrincat in the way of assets. You know, if you're the Blackhawks, are you trading him for Konechny and Morgan Frost?
No, you're not doing that.
Exactly.
They want much more than that.
And
They're
I
looking
think
at the grand salami with DeBrincat.
And I think that a team like New Jersey, and I think Anthony Sanfilippo brought up on my podcast yesterday, I think that's a team that's going to be very aggressive because you get Alex DeBrincat to play beside Jack Hughes for the next decade.
Mm-hmm.
It's a hell of a tandem there, and they have some guys by, like, I would have to assume a Pavel Zacha is a name that would be going the other way. Maybe they ship
Number 2
off
overall.
top. He was in the Provorov draft, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And then maybe you part with him, Nico Hischier. He is the captain, so maybe not so much. But they have some young players there that maybe they find are more expendable. But again,
and they got a ton of cap space too.
They have a ton of cap space. And the thing is that with them is that they have their top two centers locked and loaded for the next 10 years in Hughes and Hischier. So for them, if they get rid of everything surrounding that, they don't really give a damn because, like you said, they're built down the middle. In the way of the
floor, their structure.
And in the way of the Flyers, you don't really have those centermen for the next 10 years. You kind of have top two centermen for the next 3 years, if you're lucky. Like, how long could you possibly keep going back to the well with Couturier and Kevin Hayes as your top two centers?
Couturier to me is more like the 5-6 year, but Hayes is 3 potent. That's it.
Yeah. And he has 4 years left on his contract.
I think 5. No, 4.
4 years, yeah. And look, I like Kevin Hayes. I like Sean Couturier. It's just collectively as your top two guys.
Yeah.
Unless you have a really strong three.
And eventually you got to move Hayes to be your third line centerman.
Yeah, or him.
Dynamic top line centerman. I mean, if you have like a legit 1C, Couturier is a 2, Hayes is a 3, then that's different because you're slotted differently.
Yeah, you're talking like, let's say, obviously wishful thinking, but let's say in the summer of 2023, you find a way to sign Dylan Larkin.
Yeah.
Well, then now you're talking, but then you're probably investing how many millions of dollars down the middle. But at the same time, Toronto does that with 2 guys. So maybe that's the formula, right?
Yeah. Got to be good down the middle. All right, let's wrap it up, Ant. People can read your stuff at thefourthperiod.com.
Yep, of course. And on Twitter, ADeMarco25 as always.
As always. So we went pretty long today, 46 minutes. So thanks for doing this, brother. We'll talk next week.
No worries, man. Looking forward to it.
There he is, Anthony DeMarco, thefourthperiod.com. We appreciate him jumping on as always. Let me tell you about BetParx one more time. We got the Cup final game tomorrow night. Could be the last one of the year, last hockey game of the year. But you still got, NBA's over, but you still got baseball, you still got golf, you still got tennis, you still got Formula One, lots of areas to bet on, and football just around the corner, college and pro. You got to check out the new BetParx Casino and Sportsbook app because it is fantastic. And take it from me, the new BetParx app is everything you want in a mobile casino and sportsbook. If baseball doesn't move you like it doesn't move me, but you want to get some action on it, you can bet runs, all different kinds of player performances, same game parlays, you name it. It's all there and easy to navigate. Over-unders, name it. Easy to sign up, easy to use, fun to use, and faster to win than ever before. And right now, all BetParx users, everybody, new and existing, can use the promo code JASON750, JASON750, and that's going to get you a risk-free bet up to $750. Again, that's for new and existing users. Some terms and conditions do apply. JASON750, and that'll get you that risk-free bet up to $750. So download the BetParx Sportsbook app today. You're going to love it. It is fantastic. You do need to be over 21 and present in Pennsylvania or New Jersey. Gambling problem, call 1-800-GAMBLER. All right, that's going to wrap up episode 53 of BetParx Presents Stick to Hockey Live. We're back next week with another episode as we inch closer to the NHL draft and much more. Everybody, thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. We'll talk to you next week on a brand new edition of BetParx Presents Stick to Hockey Live. Thanks, everybody.